their forehead. Now let me be clear about this as well, because we've talked about crime and we've talked about fentanyl specifically, and this is also something that I have dealt with, unlike some of my other colleagues. And listen, I'm gonna be honest, because I actually want to fix problems. And I actually have a really good senator in Texas, and I'm sure y'all can guess which one is the good one. But let me tell you, if we care about fentanyl, I have multiple bills for that. I started on the state level before everybody started talking about it, and I have federal bills that my senior senator has signed on to. So I welcome my colleagues, because I actually want to make sure that my communities are safe. But as we start to talk about crime and statistics, Mr. Beer, I want to play a little game with you. It's called Rhetoric versus Reality. And so I want to ask you my first question.
It is not every day that we get good news about the Trump administration. So when we do, we have to really enjoy it. And that is what we are about to do right now. Because one of the most important plans, one of the most important unconstitutional and illegal power grabs that Donald Trump is going after in his mass deportation plan just had a big old fat lawsuit dropped on it. And it is screwing everything up and making him furious. And we are going to get to that before we do. If I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me now. Before we get into this lawsuit screwing over Donald Trump, we first have to hear a little bit more about the lies of this mass deportation plan from Jasmine Crockett right here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I am going to try to get through a lot quickly. As one of the few people sitting on the dais who actually practice criminal law in the state of Texas, as well as licensed in Arkansas and practice there, as well as federal courts, one of the things that you said earlier, Mr. Beer, really stuck with me, is that there are already laws on the books as it relates to those violent criminals. And I know this because even though I hail from the great city of Dallas, I can tell you that when someone would come in and they were being held in custody for, say, a crime, they also had an ICE hold, okay? And that was for those that had maybe been deported before and had re-entered illegally and things like that. And so no matter what type of city you're in, I do want to be clear, federal law already, no matter if it's under the Biden administration or if it's under a Republican administration, we all agree that we want to be safe. And I think that's the first premise that we're losing, because there isn't something that is tatted on my head that says that I'm a Democrat and therefore you illegal bad person, don't come for me, go for the ones that have the R's on their forehead. Now let me be clear about this as well, because we've talked about crime and we've talked about fentanyl specifically, and this is also something that I have dealt with, unlike some of my other colleagues. And listen, I'm gonna be honest, because I actually want to fix problems. And I actually have a really good senator in Texas, and I'm sure y'all can guess which one is the good one. But let me tell you, if we care about fentanyl, I have multiple bills for that. I started on the state level before everybody started talking about it, and I have federal bills that my senior senator has signed on to. So I welcome my colleagues, because I actually want to make sure that my communities are safe. But as we start to talk about crime and statistics, Mr. Beer, I want to play a little game with you. It's called Rhetoric versus Reality. And so I want to ask you my first question. Is this rhetoric or reality? Immigrants commit more crimes than U.S. citizens.
On a per capita basis?
Rhetoric or reality?
Oh, it is rhetoric.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record this article, which states that undocumented immigrant offending rate lower than U.S.-born citizen rate, and this is from nij.ojp.gov.
Without objection.
Thank you so much. The next one, immigrants are just living off the federal government and contribute nothing.
That would be rhetoric.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Chair, I would ask unanimous consent to enter study that says undocumented immigrants pay almost $100 billion in taxes. This is from the Alabama Reflector.
Without objection.
Thank you so much. My final rhetoric or reality question is, immigrants only enter at the southern border.
Rhetoric.
Okay, right, because they enter all kinds of ways. I just wanted to make sure that I put that out there. In fact, I have a few more questions because I still got a little bit of time, which I usually run out of time. We have talked again about crime, and there's been this overemphasis on it. And honestly, I can tell you that I don't want anyone to be killed, whether it's here or anywhere else. There is nothing about me as the child of a preacher that makes me say that I want people to die, okay? So I feel as if my colleagues from across the aisle have decided that they are going to make immigrants the boogeyman. It's insanity to me, but they also are showing compassion for victims, which they should, but they have no compassion for people that are contributing to making us great in this country. So interestingly enough, I'm curious to know, Mr. Beer, if you know if immigrants contributed to these particular crimes. There was a mass shooting in Buffalo, New York that killed a number of African Americans as they were trying to shop for groceries. Was the defendant an immigrant in that case? Do you know?
No, he was a U.S.-born citizen.
Thank you so much. Charleston, South Carolina, there were black churchgoers trying to praise the Lord. They were killed. Was that an immigrant that perpetrated that or not?
No, that was a U.S.-born citizen.
Thank you so much. Now, coming home to Texas, there was an El Paso shooting. Do you know if that was an immigrant or not?
No, they were targeting immigrants in that case.
In fact, each of these cases, it was white supremacists. And so the last unanimous consent that I'd asked for is this article that states that white supremacists behind over 80% of extremism-related U.S. murders in 2022.
Now I wanted to play that clip before we got into this story because I want to talk about what Donald Trump's mass deportation plan is really about. It is failing. And thank goodness they are not reaching the numbers they wanted. They are not carrying it out in the fashion that they could. But what they are, in part, achieving is intimidation and the consolidation of power in Donald Trump's hands that more than anything is what this plan is about. They want to make communities feel unsafe, and they want Donald Trump to feel stronger when in fact he is actually weak. That is what this is all about. They want people to be intimidated, scared, and hiding, afraid to speak up, to speak out, and to fight back. But we are finally getting a little bit of fight in the courts, and it's big. So let's take a look. Judge blocks immigration raids in certain places of worship. Religious organizations are challenging a Trump administration policy that allows ICE to conduct operations in sensitive locations. A group of mostly Quaker religious organizations has succeeded in temporarily preventing federal immigration agents from operating around their places of worship across the country in an opinion issued on Monday. A federal judge in Maryland agreed with the religious organizations that the Trump administration's departure from a Biden-era policy was keeping people from attending their services and outreach programs out of fear that they could be arrested on civil immigration violations for decades. Presidential administrations from both parties have had policies that largely avoid immigration enforcement in sensitive locations such as places of worship, schools, and hospitals. Judge Theodore Schwang of the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland denied the group's request for a temporary nationwide halt to the Trump administration's policy. As a result, about 1,700 places of worship in 35 states in the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico will be temporarily spared immigration enforcement operations under the Trump administration's policies, allowing operations around sensitive areas that were off limits during the Biden administration. The groups are being represented by Democracy Forward, a legal organization focused on fighting for democracy. This is an important win in the fight pushing back against this just gross overreach from Donald Trump. And it is something that has kind of, I feel like, fallen by the wayside in the discussion around his administration, which is understandable. There is a lot going on, but someone who directly called this out and what I thought was just a perfect takedown was Illinois Governor
Pritzker. And I want to take a look at that right here. I've been reflecting these last 4 weeks on two important parts of my life. My work helping to build the Illinois Holocaust Museum and the 2 times that I've had the privilege of reciting the oath of office for Illinois governor. As some of you know, Skokie, Illinois once had one of the largest populations of Holocaust survivors anywhere in the world. In 1978, Nazis decided that they wanted to march there. The leaders of that march knew that the images of swastika-clad young men goose-stepping down a peaceful suburban street would terrorize the local Jewish population, so many of whom had never recovered from their time in German concentration camps. The prospect of that march sparked a legal fight that went all the way to the Supreme Court. It was a Jewish lawyer from the ACLU who argued the case for the Nazis, contending that even the most hateful of speech was protected under the First Amendment. As an American and as a Jew, I find it difficult to resolve my feelings around that Supreme Court case. But I am grateful that the prospect of Nazis marching in their streets spurred the survivors and other Skokie residents to act. They joined together to form the Holocaust Memorial Foundation and build the first Illinois Holocaust Museum in a storefront in 1981, a small but important forerunner to the one I helped to build 30 years later here. I do not invoke the specter of Nazis lightly, but I know the history intimately and have spent more time than probably anyone in this room with people who survived the Holocaust. Here's what I've learned. The root that tears apart your house's foundation begins as a seed of distrust and hate and blame. The seed that grew into a dictatorship in Europe a lifetime ago didn't arrive overnight. It started with everyday Germans mad about inflation and looking for someone to blame. I'm watching with a foreboding dread what is happening in our country right now. A president who watches a plane go down in the Potomac and suggests without facts or findings that a diversity hire is responsible for the crash. Or the Missouri Attorney General who just sued Starbucks, arguing that consumers pay higher prices for their coffee because the baristas are too female and non-white. The authoritarian playbook is laid bare here. They point to a group of people who don't look like you and tell you to blame them for your problems. I just have one question. What comes next? After we've discriminated against, deported, or disparaged all the immigrants and the gay and lesbian and transgender people, the developmentally disabled, the women, and the minorities, once we've ostracized our neighbors and betrayed our friends, after that, when the problems we started with are still there staring us in the face, what comes next? All the atrocities of human history lurk in the answer to that question. And if we don't want to repeat history, then for God's sake, in this moment, we better be strong enough to learn from it. I swore the following oath on Abraham Lincoln's Bible. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of governor according to the best of my ability. My oath is to the Constitution of our state and of our country. We don't have kings in America, and I don't intend to bend the knee to one. I'm not speaking up in service to my ambitions, but in deference to my obligations. If you think I'm overreacting and sounding the alarm too soon, consider this. It took the Nazis 1 month, 3 weeks, 2 days, 8 hours, and 40 minutes to dismantle a constitutional republic. And all I'm saying is that when the 5-alarm fire starts to burn, every good person better be ready to man a post with a bucket of water if you want to stop it from raging out of control. Those Illinois Nazis did end up holding their march in 1978, just not in Skokie. After all the blowback from the case, they decided to march in Chicago instead. Only 20 of them showed up, but 2,000 people came to counter-protest. The Chicago Tribune reported that day that the rally sputtered to an unspectacular end after 10 minutes. It was Illinoisans who smothered those embers before they could burn into a flame. Tyranny requires your fear and your silence and your compliance. Democracy requires your courage. So gather your justice and humanity, Illinois, and do not let the tragic spirit of despair overcome us when our country needs us the most. Thank you.
We cannot allow Donald Trump to try to intimidate us in any way, shape, and form. We always have to be fighting back. We always have to be speaking up. And it is what we're going to do on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, you leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around at the end, you drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.